Well, Ferns, today is a very special day. I'm going to show you who's here. Now, Edward, he of course is very used to being here, but you know who else is here? Simone. She doesn't usually come up for snuggles like this, but lately, since I've been reading stories to you all, and Edward's begun coming and joining me, and she's realized that something nice is happening every time I start reading, and she comes up. And sometimes she tries to kick Edward out of the spot. But today, she decided that she was willing to share the space. So it's a two-cat kind of a day. All righty, let's see if I can find out where it is that we were last. Chapter 20, Wandering Castle at Last. Mr. Spells made a small bow. "Greetings, giant small one," he said. "I see you have not yet found a spell to make you tall one instead of small one. I come to ask you a question. We want to find your brother, Giant Twisty. Is Wandering Castle on your island?" "I believe so," said the voice of Giant Small One, rather a feeble voice for a giant. "Go to High Hill and you will see it there. Why does Mr. Spells, Grand Enchanter, want my brother?" "That is my own business," said Mr. Spells. The children thought he was very bold indeed to speak to a giant like that. "Please stay for a meal," said Small One, and he clapped his big hands, making a noise like guns firing. "I have few guests as important as you." "Oh, thank you, no," said Mr. Spells. "Our business is urgent. We will go now." He walked back to the children and Winks, and they made their way to the door. But it was shut. They couldn't open such a big door themselves, so they had to go all the way back to Small One and ask for a servant to open the door. Now it took a long time to find a servant, which was strange considering how many there had been in the hall a few minutes before. "He's delaying us," said Mr. Spells angrily. "He wants to get a message to his brother before we reach him to warn him that we are on his track." At last a servant was found. The door was opened, and they all trooped down the endless steps. They made their way down the street. They came to a wide lane lined with hedges as high as trees, and then they found a signpost that said, "To High Hill." "There's High Hill," said Peter, pointing across the fields to a very tall hill. "There are quite a lot of buildings on it. I wonder which is Wandering Castle." They came to High Hill at last, and they toiled up it. They met a small pixie running down, and Mr. Spells hailed her. "Hey, little pixie, where's Wandering Castle?" "Let me see now. I saw it yesterday," said the little pixie. "Yes, I remember now. It's in the Silver Buttercup field, sir." "Silver buttercups?" said Molly, astonished. "I've never heard of those. I don't think I would like them. The golden ones are just right." "I agree with you," said Mr. Spells, guiding them around a big house. "But some enchanters are very silly. They're always trying out novelties, you know. Well, here we are. Here is Silver Buttercup Field." And so it was. Silvery buttercups nodded in a great shimmering carpet. "Beautiful, but kind of washed out looking," said Mr. Spells. "The thing is, where is Wandering Castle? It's certainly not here. It's wandered away again. Small One got a message to his brother in time while we were trying to get that door open. Well, where has it wandered to now?" "Oh, please, sir, I know," said a small goblin, running up. "It's gone to Loneliness. I don't know if you know that country, sir. It's over the sea to the east. It's a very, very lonely place where no one ever goes if they can help it. It's going to hide itself there until you've given up looking for Twisty and his castle." "How do you know all this?" demanded Mr. Spells. "Well, because I was lying resting in these buttercups when a servant from Giant Small One came running up to warn Twisty that you were after him," said the goblin. "And I heard Twisty say where he was going." "Right. Thank you very much," said Mr. Spells. "Come along, children, back to the ship. We must sail off to Loneliness at once." Twisty could easily hide himself in that strange, desolate land without anyone finding him for years. "Oh dear, we really must find him because of Pixie," said Molly. They went back to the ship. Cinders was so pleased to see them back so soon that he quite forgot to try and scratch Winks as he got on board. They set off again, the wind filling the sails and making the ship fly like a bird. She rocked up and down lightly as she went, and the children began to feel very sleepy. They fell asleep. Mr. Spells awoke them after a time. "Molly, Peter, we're here. Wake up, both of you." They sat up in the ship. It was moored to a small pier. Molly looked out on the land of loneliness. It was a gloomy and desolate place with enormous trees growing in thick masses. "There are forests and forests of those," said Mr. Spells, looking as gloomy as loneliness looked. "How we shall ever know where the wandering castle is, I can't imagine." They landed and they walked towards the nearest forest of trees. Just as they got there, they heard a voice shouting furiously, "No peace anywhere, none at all. I come here where nobody ever goes, and what comes walking almost on top of me but a castle, just when I thought I was going to sleep alone in peace." And out of the trees burst Pixie's cousin, Sleep Alone. Well, he was just as surprised to see the children and Winks and Mr. Spells as they were to see him. "Sleep Alone? Oh, Sleep Alone! You're just about the only person who would ever come here," cried Peter. "Where is that castle that you've been complaining about? It's Giant Twisty's, and he's got Pixie a prisoner there." "Good thing, too," grumbled Sleep Alone. "Mischievous creature, always coming and disturbing me at night." "Listen, Sleep Alone," said Mr. Spells. "If you will lead us to that castle, we plan to rescue Pixie and the wishing chair, and we will turn the wicked Twisty out of his castle. Then it will be empty, in the middle of the land of loneliness, and you shall have it for your very own. Think of being alone there, with no one to wake you at night and no one to bother you ever." Sleep Alone listened to all of this in delight. What? Have a large empty castle all to himself, with 1,000 rooms to sleep in, lost in the middle of a forest in the land of loneliness? Wonderful! "Oh, I'll show you where it is," he said eagerly. They followed him. He darted in and out of the trees, following no path that they could see, and then at last they saw a wandering castle. It stood there, rocking a little in the wind, for it had no true foundations as other buildings have. It was tall and dark and gloomy, and it hadn't a single window of any kind. "There you are," said Sleep Alone. "A very fine castle, too. Only one door, no windows. Just the place for me." Mr. Spells looked at the castle in silence. One door and no windows. A very difficult place to escape from if they got inside, but they must get inside, there was no doubt about that. "Stay here by the door, Sleep Alone," said Mr. Spells at last. "We're going in." He went up the broad steps to the great studded door. The door opened. A giant stood there, a cross-eyed fellow with a twisted smile on his face. "Come in," he said. "So you've found me, have you? Well, I'm not going to deny that I've got the wishing chair, yes, and Pixie too. Now I will have you as well." Now, to the children's surprise, Mr. Spells did not run away. He stepped inside, and the children and Winks went too, all feeling rather scared. Twisty laughed. "This is easier than I thought," he said. "How are you going to get out again, Mr. Spells? There is now no door, and as I dare say you have seen, there are no windows at all." The children turned and looked behind them. The door had indeed vanished. They were indeed prisoners. But Mr. Spells didn't seem at all disturbed. "Where's Pixie?" he said. "Follow me," said Twisty, and he went down a long, dark passage and through a door. He crossed the room beyond the door, and he came to another one. The door to this was locked and bolted. He opened it. Inside was Pixie, sitting miserably in the wishing chair. He leapt up in the greatest joy when he saw the others. Molly ran to him and flung her arms around him. "Pixie, you're safe! Oh, Pixie, we've come to rescue you." Peter hugged Pixie, and Winks pumped his hand up and down, yelling, "Pixie, good old Pixie!" In the middle of all of this, there came the sound of the door being slammed and bolted, and then they heard Twisty laughing loudly. "Ha! That was too easy for words. You can't get out, Mr. Spells, however powerful you are. This door has a keep shut spell in it that I bought from an old witch years ago, and it's the only way out. You can go free if you give me some spells I have wanted for years." "Oh, you'll never get those from me, Twisty," called out Mr. Spells. "Never." "Mr. Spells, you are going to get us out of here, aren't you?" begged Molly. "Shh, don't be alarmed," said Mr. Spells. "I am going to do a spell on us all. Yes, and on the wishing chair, too. Now, where's my chalk?" He found a white piece of chalk in his pocket, and a blue one, too. He drew first a white circle, and then a blue one inside of it. He made the children, Pixie and Winks, sit down in the middle of it. And then he got into the circle himself and sat down in the wishing chair. "I'm going to say some very magic words," he said. "Shut your eyes, please, and don't be surprised at whatever happens." And when we read together next, it will be chapter 21, a very exciting time. And it's a very exciting time right here, too. Look at how exciting things are here. They've managed to stay tucked in the whole time. Maybe Simone will come and join us for more stories when we get to chapter 21, a very exciting time.